South of Midnight reviews have arrived. How is the game doing? We have a lot more information about the Nintendo Switch 2. Obviously, the announcement the other day had a lot of reactions to it. A lot of it were negative, and there's been some stuff that has been clarified that may reduce some of the negativity, but we have a look here at prices and the game carts and all of those things with the Nintendo Switch 2. Investors, they want Ubisoft to go back on the deal with Tencent. They think that they don't want this deal to happen, basically. So we'll look at that. Plus, there's many other things like Titanfall 3 could actually still be in the works, which is I'm really hoping for this. This is something that I've been wanting for a long time. I hope this is real and that they're not just getting us excited for no reason. So we will talk about all of that plus many other things. But before we do continue, as usual, if you're new here, you've been watching for a while, you aren't subscribed, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Help the channel grow. Help make the gaming news 8 a.m. every single day get bigger and bigger. I would really appreciate that. But for now, let's jump into it. So we'll start off with South of Midnight. This game is available, I believe, right now for the early access people out there who bought the premium upgrades, and then it's going to be launching a few days later on Xbox Game Pass day one. It is Compulsion Games' third game. They've made Contrast, which I enjoyed. I thought it was a decent game. They made We Happy Few, which I couldn't get through and finish. And I'm hoping that South of Midnight is going to be that game that really pushes them over the top. The reviews are in it. It is looking decent. The biggest complaints that I'm seeing about this is just the lack of variety in combat, and the gameplay gets a little bit stale near as you're going through it. And that's something that they'll need to improve on with their next game. But here is what we have right now in terms of the reviews. It is sitting at an 80 here on OpenCritic and a 76 on Metacritic. You have some 10s. Well, you have 110. You have a 9.5, some 9s, 8.5s, 8s, 7.5s, and 7. So it's sitting around what I thought it was going to come in at, which is going to be around that 80 mark. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. Definitely a game that I think is worth checking out based on what I have seen. The art style itself has me very intrigued to see how it looks on like a nice OLED display with the stop motion stuff. So that is going to be very cool. I'm excited to see the story and where they go with it. But that is the reviews right now for South of Midnight. I think this is looking like it's going to be shaping up to another good release here from Xbox. Depending, I guess, on how you take these scores. I usually look at a 7 or 8 as a decent game. Some people look at that as just a game they're going to throw away and never touch. But I'm going to jump in and play regardless to give my own thoughts and opinions on what I believe South of Midnight is and how good of a game that it is. At the Nintendo Direct with the Switch 2, one of the games that was announced was Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. And this had Xbox fans looking at this and thinking, is this thing ever coming to Xbox? It obviously can go on other consoles now. I mean, a bigger competitor to PlayStation in the console space specifically is the Nintendo Switch, especially in Japan. Final Fantasy VII Remake would be a major draw for people there. They love their handhelds, and you would think, okay, Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to pull people away from PlayStation to go play it on the Nintendo Switch. PlayStation wouldn't want that. So clearly, the exclusivity deal is over. So is this thing coming to Xbox? Well, it looks like it is still coming to Xbox, as Insider is insisting here, or an insider is insisting here, that it is happening. We have this here, Nate the Hate, who has gotten a lot of stuff correct when it comes to games, so you take his opinion for what you will. This person on, I believe this is Twitter, asking, is Final Fantasy 16 and 7 Remake still coming to Xbox? Weird how Switch 2 is getting the remake, but still nothing said on the Xbox version. And Nate the Hate says, still Xbox bound. And then you have another question here. With today's news, is the Final Fantasy 7 Remake trilogy still coming onto Xbox? He says, remake is this year, rebirth is next, just waiting on Microsoft and Square Enix to announce it. So if you're somebody who has been waiting for Final Fantasy VII, you haven't played yet, you do want to play it on Xbox for achievements and things like that, it does look like it is still coming. And I believe that it is. The Square Enix relationship with Xbox has gotten far better. Square Enix has been very open about their relationship with exclusivity and how they want to move away from that. They don't want to do any more of those PlayStation deals. They're probably very happy that the exclusivity deal is over at this point, so they can start putting their games onto the other platforms. I think this game will sell very well on the Nintendo Switch, and then I think it will also do good on Xbox. I wonder if there's something cooked up here, though, where maybe it drops into Game Pass. That would be very cool if Xbox would be able to pull that off with a big game here like Final Fantasy VII Remake. All right, now we have a small Game Pass announcement here. Another game is coming in May of 2025 that has been revealed. And that game is, if you like the simulator games, you'll be happy. Spray Paint Simulator coming to in May of 2025 to the Xbox consoles and to Game Pass. I actually liked the Power Wash Simulator game. I feel like this one is going to be very similar in the way that it plays and is probably still going to be fun. So that's coming over here to Game Pass next month. This month's Game Pass selection, as we've talked about a few times here already, it's phenomenal. April is just looking so good when it comes to the amount of games that we are getting on top of stuff that isn't dropping into Xbox Game Pass. And then now you have the whole excitement, I guess for some people, with the Nintendo Switch 2 to look forward to in just a couple of months in June, but more information will always be coming out about that. And speaking about the Nintendo Switch 2, the question is, how much more powerful is this thing than the Nintendo Switch? They didn't give us any specs yesterday. They didn't tell us what was under the hood. They didn't give us a comparison of the Switch 1 versus the Switch 2, other than basically saying some of the games that are on the current Switch, if the Switch 2 version will have higher frame rates and resolutions, that will give you that better experience. But NVIDIA is the chip here on the Nintendo Switch 2. And one of the questions I've always had is, will they be integrating DLSS? Because this thing can output 4K. They must be using some sort of DLSS technology to be able to get that, especially with the big AAA games that will be landing on the Switch 2. And we got all of those answers here announced by NVIDIA themselves. They put out a blog post, and it's pretty interesting if you want to know the details of this. They put this out saying that the Switch 2 was unveiled on April 2nd, and they say that the new console now enables up to 4K gaming in TV mode and up to 120 frames per second at 1080p in handheld mode. The Switch 2 also supports HDR and AI upscaling to sharpen visuals and smooth gameplay. Specifically, the new RT cores bring real-time ray tracing, delivering lifelike lighting, reflections, and shadows for more immersive worlds. And Tensor cores power AI-driven features like deep learning super sampling, so DLSS, boosting resolution for sharper details without sacrificing image quality. And the Tensor cores also enable AI-powered face tracking and background removal in video chat use cases, enhancing social gaming and streaming. And the specific power difference here between the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, they say, is 10 times the graphics performance of the Nintendo Switch. The Switch 2 delivers smoother gameplay and sharper visuals. It will also support VRR via NVIDIA G-Sync in handheld mode, so you're getting the smooth, non-tearing FPS and the things that you get right now on the Xbox and on PlayStation 5, although the VRR on PS5 is far worse than the Xbox's VRR, but it does make a big difference. As somebody who just in the end of 2024 got, or maybe it was the beginning of 2025, I think it actually was the beginning of 2025, got an OLED display with a VRR. I've been missing out over the last 5 years of gaming by not having that. It does make a big difference. You're upgrading your TV is almost more important than actually upgrading your console or upgrading your PC in ways, because the TV makes a big difference when you are playing games. So the Switch 2 will be able to take advantage of a lot of that stuff in handheld mode. And then I'm assuming this will also be translating over when you're in dock, like the 4K stuff and the ray tracing. The fact that it has those features, I think for some people may be surprising, but NVIDIA is working their magic here to give those current generation, bringing the graphics and the features on the Switch 2 up to the modern times with the other consoles. So 10 times more graphics performance. If you're out there trying to compare, is it worth the upgrade? I think it is worth the upgrade, just for the console itself, but the pricing is still out of whack for a lot of people. There's still a lot of outrage for the Nintendo Switch 2. I think the pricing is price gouging by Nintendo in so many different ways. There's ways that they could be bringing these prices down. It's not really justifiable in my opinion. Although I've said on this channel, I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to go and pick up a Nintendo Switch 2. I'm going to try to pre-order it next week for channel purposes, show it off, do all that stuff, and because I am somebody who does like my Nintendo, but I know that I am getting price gouged here, and there may actually be price cuts in the future. If you remember with the Nintendo 3DS, how that went when they announced and launched that thing way overpriced, didn't sell well. People called them out. They cut the price and they had to do a whole apology tour for the Nintendo 3DS. In fact, they had the Nintendo Treehouse yesterday, which is like their little event after where they're showing more games that are coming to this Switch and Switch 2. And 99% of the comments on this stream were asking Nintendo to drop the price. People are really pissed off about this, and I think rightfully so. At the time of writing this article, this is Tom Anderson who wrote this on Insider Gaming. He says here, 121,000 people are currently watching the live stream on the official Nintendo America YouTube channel, with many voicing their frustration about the console and the game prices. Drop the price currently consists of about 99% of the comments on the stream, with a few comments here and there giving thoughts on the actual stream. There's been many screenshots floating around, and you can see the drop the price, and everyone very upset here about the pricing of the Nintendo Switch 2. I think the thing here, the console pricing is higher than I expected. I don't think it's that crazy, at least in like the UK and the United States, and obviously in Japan, where it's over $100 cheaper than anywhere else than the US. It's over $100 cheaper than the price of the Switch 2 in the US. It's the game prices that I think are throwing people off more so than anything. And you have to ask the question, because we don't fully know why everyone is throwing out why they believe the prices are higher than they should be. The tariffs could play a role. Inflation plays a role. Economics play a role. Nintendo just simply being greedy probably plays the biggest role. But there are many reasons why people are throwing out there in terms of the pricing. The ESA, as they have been pretty vocal on what the tariffs and the current economic conditions could have, the effect that they could have on the video game industry. And this is a United States trade group, and this is what they're saying specifically about some of this pricing that is happening, because it's not just going to end with the Switch 2. I think the pricing for electronics and for gaming is going to go up across the board for many different things as of right now, based off of the policies that are being implemented. But this says the U.S. trade group, the ESA, says Trump's tariffs will have a real and detrimental impact on the video game industry. This is specifically from Stephen Totilo, who spoke with them from his Game File newsletter. And the ESA Vice President Aubrey Quinn said that game hardware, including consoles, could take a big hit as a result of these tariffs. Specifically here, saying this: any one product that consumers would buy is likely to be subject to many of the tariffs announced, all compounded on top of one another. Quinn is suggesting that the situation could worsen given the possibility that countries affected by the tariffs may respond by imposing tariffs of their own on the U.S., warning, I think what we heard yesterday is not the end of the story, not for the United States and not for other countries, saying, I think every company, every industry, the video game industry included, needs to think about what's best for consumers, best for business, and best for employees. Supply chains are complicated, and certainly supply chains don't change overnight. Everything that is considered or decided can't be a quick turnaround and can't be a knee-jerk reaction to any particular announcement. So the ESA here, a U.S. group, do believe that these tariffs are going to have a major effect on pricing. They do believe that they're having effects on the current Switch and everything. If you read what they're saying about how things are going up, the hardware. So that could be a major reason, but it is the game pricing that is probably the craziest thing for most people, even myself here in Canada. I looked at the listing prices for Nintendo Switch 2 games yesterday. They were coming up on the places online where I shop here, and $99 some of these games were listed at for the standard version. And that is just for third-party titles like Daemon X Machina. $99. Rune Factory, these smaller third-party games, $99. It was insane, the pricing of these Switch 2 games. I'm gonna definitely look and see if the digital versions when the Switch 2 is out are going to be less, because we are seeing that discrepancy between digital pricing and physical pricing. A lot of people have questions because it isn't in the United States, looks like, but in Europe, in the UK, we are seeing those different prices between digital and physical copies of games. I don't know why they're selecting certain parts of the world to do this in, but they are doing these crazy pricing things. In fact, we do have this. UK retailer game executive says physical Switch 2 games being more expensive than digital is a challenge. In an interview here with the Game Business, the managing director, Nick Aaron, said he felt that the retailer's pre-order allocation of Switch 2 hardware will likely sell out in minutes, not hours. And I agree with that. The Switch 2, regardless of how much people are outraged online, regardless of how much it costs in different parts of the world, are going to sell out instantly, and the pre-orders are going to go right away next week. So if you do want one, they're going to go because people love Nintendo. It says here that the price of the console is really great, so he thinks the pricing is better. UK, keep it in mind, is cheaper than the United States in terms of the price of the console. But he also notes here that Nintendo's decision to make its physical game more expensive than its digital ones may make things trickier for game and retailers, saying it's a challenge. Nintendo's is predominantly physical, and it's proud to be physical. To make the move before PlayStation and Xbox that digital games will be cheaper than physical, it's a bold move, and it will be a bit of a challenge for us as a retailer. And it's a tough message for a customer when there are differences in prices if they prefer physical. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. And says, despite the price discrepancy, Aaron and said Game will continue to sell the physical Switch 2 products, saying it's not going to stop us in terms of the support we're going to give Switch 2 and Nintendo, and hopefully it won't have too much of an effect on the physical sales. As a retailer, physical is obviously important to me, but I am also a strong believer that gaming is an important media that needs to have physical. If you're spending 75 or 70 pounds on a product, it's the tangible value that can sit on the shelf and be in your collection. Hopefully this strategy doesn't impact that. So that's the case. There are differences between physical and digital with Nintendo Switch in certain areas of the world. And I've been an advocate here for a very long time that digital games should be less expensive than physical games. It just makes sense because these producers, the publishers, it costs them way less to sell you a game digitally. They don't have to go through all the logistics of getting the game case, shipping the game case, dealing with third party retailers. All of that stuff is gone with digital. They just post it up on the store, especially if you are the first party owner of the digital store. I just didn't expect Nintendo to be the first here to do that by raising the prices so significantly from where we are used to with gaming, $60, $70. Bringing them up to 90 here for a physical version is just kind of crazy to think about. Now, when it comes to the game cards themselves, there has been a lot of hysteria around it. And initially it was for good reason, but when you sit back, more information came out. I pinned this as a comment on my video yesterday. There has been some more clarification on how the physical carts work. It is basically the same as it was last generation in terms of how they are doing things. It's not like they're going out there and making every single game not available on the game key card. There is this graphic here explaining how it works. No real different than last generation. The big difference here is that games are bigger, so there will be more games that are just licensed to download because they probably can't fit on the key cards themselves. So this is a good graphic explaining how it works. It says game key cards, physical card that requires a download. You will be told that you need a download, and they're using Street Fighter 6 as an example. This is a big AAA game that is on PS5 and Xbox Series X, so I'm not surprised that you're going to have to download it and they can't fit it all on the Switch card itself. Very similar to what we had last gen. I mean, you look at an example here from the Outer Worlds. They had certain games that full game downloads were required from the store, even though you bought the physical version. But then there is still the standard game cards with the full games on the cart, just like they were with the current Nintendo Switch. They have the Breath of the Wild Switch 2 edition and Donkey Kong Bonanza as examples. I feel like most first-party Nintendo games, because they're smaller, and this is kind of making the pricing even crazier because their development costs are probably much lower than Xbox and PlayStation, but because they're smaller games, those I think will mostly all be on the Switch 2 carts, and then you'll have big games, big third-party titles that maybe they didn't get compressed enough and they didn't optimize it enough to be able to fit it all on the cart, that you're going to have to go to the store and download. And we have another example here of big games coming to the Switch 2 in terms of performance and pricing, how the pricing is all over the board. Cyberpunk 2077 on the Nintendo Switch 2 runs at 40 frames per second and costs $70. So this one's $70. It's not $80, not $90, $70 here, and you're getting Cyberpunk 2077, and I believe you get like the expansion and everything with this version of the game, but it's running at 40 FPS. So people thinking that the Switch 2 is going to even be comparable to the Series X and PS5 need to get that out of their mind right away, as you're going to see a lot of games still locked at 30 FPS on this console, 40 FPS as well. Maybe we'll see that as being a trend. They say that the game will be distributed on a 64 gigabyte game card containing the game and the expansion, no download required. So this is another one, big third-party game that they were able to shrink it down to fit on a 64 gigabyte game card with the expansion. So more good news here if you're somebody who was hoping that there will be games on the cart. You're not going to have to download all of them. And it's good for collectors. That is the main thing, that you'll have the actual games on the cart themselves. And this says as well as via digital download from Nintendo eShop. So you get it either way. But it's going to be running at 40 frames per second while in performance mode when the system is docked. So that's the key. When it's docked, 40 FPS. When it's in handheld, you should be expecting less than that. So a little bit more clarification on how the games work for the Switch 2, because I think, including myself, there was a lot of question marks. And this is why I compare this to the Xbox One announcement, simply because of how many questions there were, how many people were posting information that ends up not really fully being correct in regards to what is happening with this console right after the announcement went. And now, a few days later, it's getting cleared up. But how much will that help? Because misinformation travels very fast, and people believe it for a very long time without ever updating what the actual truth is in their brain, which is what I'm kind of trying to do here with the Switch 2 info, is with the game carts. It's not as bad as I had thought, at least yesterday. Okay. A Marathon game coming from Bungie. This is going to be everywhere. It's a first party PlayStation game. This is going to be on Xbox. So when we talk about third parties, everyone is making these moves. I know I'll get comments saying it's not comparable, but it is a first party PlayStation game coming onto Xbox. Some news is being teased here. They teased some Bungie news yesterday. It says on Thursday afternoon, the official Marathon Twitter account posted a glitching teaser while updating its header image. Not long after that, the official PlayStation account also updated its header image to something Marathon related. If you were on social media at all, I'm sure you did see it. There's not much here, but it's just a glitch. So we're probably getting an announcement for this soon. Jeff Grubb back in February said that Marathon wasn't a part of the month's PlayStation State of Play because PlayStation was planning a standalone event for the game, if you remember the State of Play that they had, which I think a lot of people weren't a big fan of. So it looks like this standalone event that Jeff Grubb was referencing here is going to be coming soon. I mean, they're teasing an announcement for this. You would assume that it is going to be here very, very soon. Okay. We have a couple more things here. One exciting thing and one Ubisoft related thing, which is very interesting. But this one here, we'll start off. Titanfall 3. There was a game at Respawn that had been canceled recently, I believe. And it was people were thinking it was Titanfall 3. They were deciding not to go make this anymore. We didn't know what game it was, but that was the assumption for a lot of people. And now there's a new rumor that may not be the case. We have Rebs Gaming here saying, according to gaming leakers Yorosuke and Osvaldo, Titanfall 3 is happening and planned to release in 2026. This is the message from Yorosuke about Titanfall 3. To be honest, it's really fun to play a joke with the truth on April Fool's Day. It lets me announce some unbelievable truths in a playful way. So yes, Titanfall 3 is coming. Somebody should have seen me talking on my Discord servers in December 2024 about RSPN having, so it's Respawn, having a secret game in development. That game is Titanfall 3, and it will be announced at TGA 2025 at the earliest, and then officially released in 2026. So Rebs Gaming says here, this is not an April Fool's joke. I have so much hope now that this is going to actually be coming if this becomes true. This is one that I've wanted for so long. I loved Titanfall. I loved the first one. I loved the second one. The second one obviously brought us that amazing campaign. The game just did not sell well. If you remember what Titanfall 2 it released, sandwiched between Call of Duty and Battlefield, and I think that definitely killed it in a lot of ways. It was just very hard to compete as a franchise that was trying to establish itself with two franchises that were juggernauts at the time. Battlefield obviously recently has fallen off. So I think that had a big deal with killing Titanfall and them moving away from wanting to make this game. There's so much they could do with this. There's so much they can make with the campaigns, and I really hope Titanfall 3 is truly coming. This will be a big hype moment. I think people do want it now. I think they're ready for a new Titanfall. And finally, as we know, Ubisoft and Tencent made a deal. Investors now are demanding that Ubisoft renegotiates the deal with the Tencent subsidiary and initiate legal proceedings. So we have this report here from Insider Gaming saying a minority shareholder and a growing coalition of shareholders have issued an open letter to Ubisoft to initiate legal proceedings around the recently announced Ubisoft and Tencent subsidiary deal. In an open letter to Ubisoft, which was sent to Insider Gaming, the letter demands that Ubisoft hold an extraordinary general meeting to give shareholders the right to vote on the recent subsidiary deal. In the letter, which was sent by minority shareholder AJ Investments, demands that shareholders can vote on two separate resolutions when it comes to the Tencent deal. This is the letter itself, but they're basically just wanting to vote on this. And for them to, first resolution, renegotiate the Tencent deal, have it restructured into direct asset sales for no less than 4 billion euros. And then they go down here and explain their reasoning. Resolution 2 for the EGM would be to vote on the distribution of an extraordinary dividend. And it said that the following sale, if shareholders vote for it, Ubisoft shall return 23 euros per share in cash to shareholders, totaling 3 billion while preserving. So that's what they want here. They don't want them to go through with the deal. Now, the reality is this is a minority shareholder group. Will this have a big effect? Will it force their hand to go out and do these things? I don't believe this is the first time that AJ Investments has gone and sent a letter for Ubisoft to do something different than what they were planning, or that they were upset as to what Ubisoft was doing. We will see. I mean, the deal with Tencent is, for a lot of people, an interesting thing, but also a bad thing, depending on what happens with the future of these IPs. I'm not very optimistic about Tencent. I just don't know how much they are going to actually help Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and Rainbow Six Siege, which are their biggest IPs, just simply because of what they have done in the past with the crazy microtransaction riddled games and the mobile games and all of that. But who knows? It's not like they own the subsidiary. They own 25% of it, so they may not have the final say on things, but we will have to see what happens. At the end of the day, when it comes to Ubisoft, I like their IPs. Assassin's Creed is one of my favorite franchises, and they have so many other great IPs in the gaming industry. And if it takes an investment from another company to keep those alive, rather than Ubisoft just die and go away into the abyss and we don't get to see those games anymore, I will settle for that investment so we can still end up have a chance at playing more of those IPs and more of those games. But on the video there, guys, if you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. We'll be right back.